Hello. We're doing a watercolor workshop today. Last week we did the watercolor color wheel. So today we're focusing more on technique. So pretty much you just gotta follow along. The supplies you're gonna need are a paint set, a cup of water, a brush, and a paper towel or a napkin, okay? So at the top of your paper, upper left-hand corner, we're gonna make 3 boxes that are vertical. And each of these boxes we're making today is pretty much a different technique. This one is called a glaze. So basically what a glaze is, it's where you apply paint, you let it dry, then you come back in after it's dry and add a color into it, and it mixes, but it doesn't mix that because both paints are wet. It kind of sits on the surface and creates a different kind of mixture. Okay, so pretty much we're just doing 3 colors. The first box is orange, middle box is yellow, third box is blue. So very simple, you're just taking your orange paint, the first box. If you outline the box first, it makes it a lot easier because then you're not worried about going outside the lines. Okay, so once again, those are going to be glazes. Those colors are just going to sit. We're going to let those dry. We're going to come back to it at the end of the lesson, and I'll show you what to do then. So our next technique is going to be called wet on dry. So what that refers to is basically we have a wet watercolor media onto a dry surface, which is the paper. So for these boxes, we're going to be going horizontally, one above and one below. So once again, these boxes don't have to be big. We're only using like 1 sheet of paper for this whole experiment. So if you use 2 big boxes, you're gonna run out of room also. Okay. So we're gonna merge yellow into red, as we talked about last week on our color wheel. Yellow and red are primaries. The secondary color is called orange. So on the left-hand side, we're going to do yellow. Now, as you paint, you want to make sure, as far as like water to paint ratio, that as you put your paint on the paper, you shouldn't see a puddle forming. If that's happening, you're using way too much water. What I usually do is take water and sort of scrape it off on the side before I grab the paint. That way I know I'm not grabbing too much water. And it's mostly just pigment in the paint that I'm applying. If you have too much water, it also affects how these 2 colors will react to each other. So left-hand side yellow, right-hand side red. So as you get these 2, you want to kind of work quickly. You want to make sure both paints stay wet as you're working. So I just want to start to overlap the red into the yellow. And you should start seeing like an orange tone sort of pick up. I'm not going all the way to the side, left-hand side there. I'm going to go back through. So far I just overlapped the red into the yellow. Now I'm going to go back, grab my yellow, and kind of do the same thing. we're merging back into the red. So you have yellow, orange in the middle, and then red. For this next one, we're going to use 3 different colors. We're going to be using purple, blue, and then green. So we have our purple on the left-hand side. Stop in the middle, we're going to apply that blue. And finally, we have our green. We can start to merge these colors together. So my green can flow into my blue. I can come back and grab my purple and start merging that into the blue. And usually I kind of look at it, just kind of go back and forth if I don't see it mixing real well. Okay. As long as you have some kind of merging color, it looks like one color is flowing into the other, you're perfectly fine. Okay. So our next technique is called wet on wet. So in this technique, we're going to wet the surface of the paper first, apply paint, and it sort of blooms and spreads. Whereas our last technique, wet on dry, does not do that. So for this, we're going to do 2 vertical boxes next to the ones we just did. Okay, so for this one, you're going to be sort of saturating the paper with just water only on your brush. You shouldn't have a huge puddle, but just get it so it's wet, okay? So the first one, we're just doing one color. So I'm gonna go back to our red. And just sort of like do like little pinpricks. And what you should see is like colors sort of spreading out. This is always good if you're doing like something more organic. It has like a flow to it. It's sort of unpredictable how these come out sometimes. So what you should see is sort of like some light areas, some darker areas that are sort of like swirling and mixing into each other, okay? Same technique we're going to be using for the next box. We're going to use multiple colors on that one. So once again, you want to make sure you wash your brush off really good. We're only grabbing water at this point, just wetting down the surface within that box. Okay. And I'll stick with my red. Then I'll go in with my yellow and put that in there. So what should happen is, as you're grabbing that yellow should sort of merge with the red. So our next technique we're looking at is making a value scale. So I have this whole top part of the paper kind of covered. I got to move down. If you already had to move down, that's fine. Just how I'm working. If your space finishes faster than mine, that's fine. We're just using the whole paper, so. I'm going to draw a vertical rectangle. Okay, and for this one, we're going to use blue. So what I'm trying to get is basically blue sort of floating into a lighter blue. So darker on top, as we go down towards the triangle, it's going to be lighter. So get about this much done. I just want to grab some water with your cup and work back into the blue and just start working your way down. So as you can see, the color gets lighter as you hit the bottom. It's a much paler kind of a blue. We're going to go back into our blue and strengthen the top. And as the brush runs out of color, it's going to just merge into that lighter section at the bottom.